You
offering relative density. But
you're dropping in and out a little bit.
I'm not.
Can be like chucking a couple of sultanas at the wall.
Oh, let's try and fix it.
That's better. That seemed okay.
That better, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's posted this this meme, I think, call it. Take a look at this. So he's like, oh, arguments against flat Earth or something. So he's posted this. I had a look at this list, and I'm like, when has any of this ever been demonstrated to be true? Like GPS satellites, and cross that one off, B-ball for life, because you've never seen a satellite, you've never verified, confirmed, validated a satellite never in your life. Satellite photography, again, those images cannot be verified, validated in any way.
Kimo, let me ask you a question about GPS. So I was deployed in Afghanistan, and the cool thing about some of our vehicles is that we can still get GPS signal when our vehicles are in a valley.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Again, this is not demonstrating the actual satellite itself, right?
Well, so you think we erected a tower in the middle of valley in Afghanistan?
Look, I mean, again, it's not really an argument, really, is it? The first one, you just believe there are satellites. That's a belief based on technology.
So how is it that we can track all of our vehicles on the ground? We can know exactly where all of our vehicles are.
That. I don't know. Got no idea.
Oh, that's
but
because of GPS.
You're claiming that it's a satellite and GPS and stuff. So
what else? Okay, so what else is it, Kimo?
I don't know.
It's a GPS. I'm telling you.
Okay, so let's take a look.
That's
then.
what it is.
Let's have a look. Okay, let's have a look.
So you've seen them. You can Google GPS satellites.
Yeah, I've never seen a real GPS satellite.
I don't think you've ever tried.
Yeah, can you show a GPS satellite? Not for me to get. It's not for me to provide evidence for. Your wild claim. It's on your list. Hold on a second. It's on your list as the first one. This is the argument that you have. So where are the arguments?
I gave you evidence that our vehicles are tracked with GPS.
Yeah. Okay. Where's the satellite? Then?
We don't go to Afghanistan and build towers for GPS. When we used to drive through Afghanistan, through
just
valleys,
posted this list,
mountains, and valleys.
You posted this list, and you post the satellite.
No, what do you mean? Post a picture of a satellite?
Yeah, the one that's
launched. How long do you want to go into this? Because I mean, we got one before it launched.
Yeah.
So this satellite here that we're looking at here is the GPS satellite.
There's a dude in the background for scale.
Yeah, what's the problem? It's here on Earth. So what? Not arguing with that.
How far do you want to go into this?
This is the satellite that gives you GPS, and it's here in the room. B-ball for life. What's the issue?
There you go.
How does this prove the globe?
Well, how does it work from that room?
I don't know. That's what it's been presented with. GPS in the room. That was his claim. That this satellite in this room is how GPS works. Okay,
yes,
fine.
Subsequent to it being launched into space.
That's an extra claim now. Can you show it being launched into space, this satellite?
Picture.
So here's one getting loaded up.
Yeah, being loaded up.
Well, the fact that it's in space is supported by his first piece of evidence, which was that a vehicle in a valley can receive a signal from it, right?
Yeah, but we don't know that. That's just a story.
Well, no, it's not a story, actually. Anybody that's in the military can tell you that.
That's his first-hand experience. Are we going to ignore his first-hand experience?
In this climate, absolutely. I mean, we're faced with the greatest lie ever told. So I thought
it was first-hand experience above all else.
Any willy-nilly story is going to have to be verified and shown that satellite is actually orbiting where he says it is. You know. That's fine. Again, it's not really an argument, so we can cross off your first one. GPS, because
the fact that I can sit in my vehicle in Afghanistan and I can look at a screen, right? And on that screen, I can see 30, 40 other vehicles that are in that area.
doesn't show how they're in space, and this is proves it's a globe.
No, that shows that we're tracking our vehicles using GPS satellites.
That doesn't prove it's a globe, though, either way.
That proves that there's GPS satellites in orbit.
It doesn't prove they're satellites, and it doesn't prove they're a globe.
So,
it's just
okay,
you saying so. Another
how-
story. If I say there are satellites
how are we
over
getting
the
this
ice
signal
wall, you're going to say, "Show me these satellites over the ice wall."
So Chemo, how are we getting this signal then?
Again, we could go down the philosophy. How does the water stay on without being in a container?
No, we're not.
There has to be a
talking about water.
container.
We're talking about GPS.
Yeah, but I'm saying that your point now is there has to be.
We're not going to talk about water. We're going to talk about GPS.
But your argument is as strong as me saying.
GPS since it was the first.
I may as well argue for water
right?
being contained, and say it has to be. It just has to be.
about
How can the water
GPS
stay on
because
without
it
the
was
container?
It was the first thing on my list, right?
Yeah, but your argument is it has to be,
Okay,
and I'm
so
saying that the water
where
has
else-
to be
where-
contained. I don't
where
have to
else
show
will
you the
we be
ice
getting-
wall, but the water has to be contained.
Where else will we be getting these signals from?
Where else? How else would the
How-
water stay on the
how
earth?
else are vehicles being tracked on the battlefield?
How else would the water stay on the earth if it wasn't contained by a
Okay,
big
I
ice
see
wall?
I see you want to go to a different subject because you lost this one.
Well, that's my point. I'm using your
what's the
argument
next-
to show you that you can
What
cross
else
that
on the
off.
list? Let's go back to the list. What's next?
Well, we can
Satellite
cross off
photography?
GPS because you can't show me a satellite
Well, I
orbiting, yeah?
gave you evidence. Well, no, I gave you evidence of GPS.
All right, so I
So
can
if
add in.
you-
I can add into my on the flat Earth
You wanna
side.
go to satellite photography.
Water needs a
What do you got?
container, and there has to be a container for the
I
water
see
to
you're
stay on.
already, I see you're already struggling. So you lost GPS, and now what's next?
All right,
Satellite
fine. I've lost
photography.
GPS. Let me
That
use
one.
my argument now. There has to be a container to hold the water on.
Says who?
There's water. Have you ever seen a water without a container?
Okay, show me your model with water being contained.
A
with an ice
model.
wall. Yeah.
What? You don't have a bath or a sink or a cup?
No, you show me yours.
Show you what?
Kima, you
A
can
cup-
see water containing itself. Drops of water.
Well, hold on. Why do I have to show you that? It has to be.
Well, I need to see it.
No, you don't. It just has to be that
Draw
way.
Draw me a
So you
diagram.
lost that first argument now, then, because you
Draw-
can't
draw
show
Draw
me
a diagram.
not the container, right? It has to have a container, yeah.
Timo, you're crap at this.
Yeah.
These are bad arguments you make.
Well, it has to have a
He-
container. It has
It's not a
to.
bad
away
argument. It's the
from-
fact of he wants Timo to show him, right? Like you guys you say about us.
Right,
I know
but-
what you're doing. But at the same time, that's nothing. That's all he's ever seen. So why would I have
However,
to
his
show-
claim was on the first one was that he could just say satellites are above the ice wall, but he can't just say that, can he?
Why?
Because that isn't supported by any evidence,
What evidence?
at all.
What evidence?
Whereas satellites being in orbit
Mhm.
is supported by a whole wealth of
Where? Well, we're asking people-
including our ability to look up in the sky and see them.
I was asking B-Ball for life for the evidence. He hasn't provided it yet.
Whereas I can't look up in the sky above Antarctica and see satellites.
You can go to the south.
can I?
You can go to the south and see the ice wall.
The fact that I can be in an airplane and not have a phone signal,
Mhm.
but I can still have a GPS signal.
The fact that we can see Admiral Byrd's expeditions going to the ice wall means there's an ice
Now
wall.
we're jumping to Admiral Byrd.
Yeah, the military.
We love jumping subjects, don't
You're
we?
military, he's military. He went to the ice wall, you did something else that you can't even videotape and show. So he showed the ice wall and the edge and said there's more land, but you in the military can't show anything.
Well,
He
have there-
didn't say there was
said
more
it.
land. He did
He
not.
Said there
say
was more Antarctica.
Yeah, he said there was big areas of Antarctica that at that time were unexplored. He didn't say there was
And then died 2
undiscovered
years
land.
later. Mysteriously.
Well, not really mysteriously, is it?
No,
He's an
look,
old
the
man.
main point
Old
is,
men die.
the main point is this list here. So I can put on my side of the flat Earth side that water must be contained. Large bodies of water must be contained. So that,
Okay, well, how have you established that to be true?
well, I've just
Yes,
said,
that
I don't
has
have
already
to
been
show
pointed
you.
out in the
It just
chat.
has to be. I don't have
As
to.
has already
There's
been
plenty
pointed
of
out in the
evidence.
chat, that's
There's
not the
plenty,
case.
plenty of evidence to show that large bodies need a container.
Water,
Hey, when have you ever seen
I
that?
don't have to show you that. I don't have to
You've never even seen a large body of water contained.
in a bath.
That's not a large body of water, is it?
What is it then?
A small body of water.
So that small body of water can stay like that uncontained.
I didn't say that. We're talking about your claim is about large bodies of water.
That is a large body of water.
No, it's not.
It's in a container.
Okay, so what is an ocean then? If
it's a large body of water.
And a bath. We use the same word to describe the size of both of those
large
things.
bodies cannot
Are
support...
you sure?
Large bodies,
Are you sure about that?
Large bodies cannot support its own weight. That bath water cannot
Because
support...
I don't think that you do. I don't think that anybody who speaks the English language, if they were using large to describe the size of, say, the Atlantic Ocean, they would not also use large to describe a bath.
Well,
what about a glass of water? What would you consider that?
Yeah, that body of water cannot support its own weight.
Yeah, but so what about a glass of water?
Needs a container.
Do you consider that a large body of water?
So there's no need to argue. Me and B-Ball right now, we're on 1-1. We don't have to show anything. We just have to say because it has to be. It must be. All right?
Real quick, though, the fact that there is a pressure gradient in the water is the water supporting its own weight, Chemo. So you got that one wrong anyway.
No, the water cannot support itself.
That's what the pressure gradient is, genius.
Talking about the water, it needs a container.
The pressure gradient in water is water supporting its own weight.
But the water will find its level if it's not contained.
Hydrostatic equilibrium demonstrates gravitation.
Show me a gravitation. And which gravitation are you
talking about?
As
I just said, hydrostatic equilibrium demonstrates gravitation.
Which gravitation, Newton or Einstein?
Doesn't matter. Gravitation is gravitation.
One is a force, one is not a force.
No, Emo, the effect is the same, the explanation is different.
Doofus, which gravity are you talking about?
The result is the same.
You're talking about the force or the one that's not a force?
I'm talking about mass accelerating towards other mass, which,
is that
by
the one that's a force?
Which, by the way, both versions, both descriptions support. Both of them say mass accelerates towards other mass.
Okay, but is that the one with the force or the one that's not a force?
Both of them say mass accelerates towards other mass.
I know, but one of them say it's a force, and one of them say it's not a force. Which one are you talking about?
They both can be treated as a force because mass under acceleration will exert a force.
I understand.
Weight is a force.
I understand that. But one is a force, an actual force that creates energy and strength, and the other has no energy whatsoever.
This is what happens when you don't listen to what I say, Chemo. What I said was that mass under acceleration exerts a force when it hits something else.
I'm trying to figure out which...
Weight is that force.
I'm trying to figure out which force.
In both descriptions of gravity, weight is a force.
So you're talking about the one with the force, yeah?
No, Chemo, they are the same. They are forces.
No, they're not the same. One is a force, one is not a force.
How did you imply it?
Of gravity, weight is a force.
Don't ask
me which one I'm talking about again. I'm always talking about gravity.
So are you talking about Newtonian gravity?
Negative. I'm talking about gravity.
Which is what? Einsteinian's understanding or Newtonian's understanding?
Chemo, do you understand that force and acceleration go hand in hand when we talk about masses?
They weren't around. They weren't born at the same time, Doofus. One came before the other, and one came after the other. So which one are you talking about?
Do you understand that they go hand in hand? That if you have an acceleration, you also have a force, and the other way around. Do you understand this?
No, I'm trying to figure out which one are you talking about, the force or the non-force?
You're trying to do a chicken or the egg kind of freaking
No,
deal,
I'm asking
and
which
this is
gravity
not a
are you
chicken or the
discussing?
egg.
We've got to define our terms. Are you discussing?
How did you take the conclusions? Because one is a force and another one is not. Did you calculate something to see, or did you experiment something to see? Because one is a force and the other one
no, none of that. No.
So in this case, from where do you have the conclusion?
Einstein.
Einstein never said it's not a force.
Yeah, exactly, not a force. So Doofus, are you going with not a force or are you going with
Einstein never said it's not a force. Never in his life. From where do you have this stupid argument?
What force is Einstein talking about?
Einstein is describing gravity, my friend. So from where do you have this conclusion?
You're
Did
saying
you calculate
Einstein...
something? Did you experimented something?
Chemo's never going to get anywhere until he agrees that a force and an acceleration goes hand in hand. He's never going to accept anything until he can concede that.
Are you saying Einstein is talking about a force, Decodus? The gravitational
force? Oh, my
force?
friend. Oh, yes, my friend.
But what force was he just... Explain it to me.
Well, why do I have to explain it to you if you never done it? Nothing in your life.
You interrupted my conversation to talk about it, so why don't you explain it?
Chemo.
You just interrupted the conversation while I was talking to Doofus
to
talk about Einstein has a gravity that is a force. So can you explain it?
From where do you have this stupid argument? Because Einstein didn't apply a force on his equation.
He did or he didn't? Make your mind up.
He did apply... no, Chemo. From where do you have this stupid argument? Because Einstein didn't apply it a force on his equation.
What force is that?
Fucking imbecile. Mate, you're playing games right now. From where do you have the argument? Because Einstein didn't apply it a force.
I'm trying to find out what force are you talking about?
You are dumb as crap, Chemo.
So you don't know what force you're talking about?
The gravitational, it's a gravity, it's a force, Chemo.
The gravitational
force. Stop playing games, word games, for nothing.
Can you cite that where Einstein talks about the gravitational force?
Can you? No, Chemo. You have to explain to everybody why Einstein didn't see it as a force. Can you explain it to everybody?
Can you show that he did say it's a force?
No, Chemo, explain it to everybody why Einstein didn't see it as a force.
Yes.
And after that, we're going to have a discussion.
What? Who and what YouTube channel told you that, Chemo? Go ahead.
Yes, give me the citation.
What YouTube channel told you that otherwise, Chemo?
Okay, so look, let's get back to this list. Let me post it again so you can keep up to date with what we're on about. I can find it.
I don't see why you guys keep trying to talk about Newton and Einstein when Chemo hasn't even accepted that a force and acceleration go hand in hand.
So we can rule off GPS because you can't verify unless you just say it is because it is and it has to be and I just feel and believe it. Satellites, you haven't showed any photography unless you again just say it is because it is. So let's move on.
Chemo.
Let's take a look
at... you're jumping from a subject that I have been catching to you because you don't understand the gravity and you cannot apply gravity without a force and you don't have nothing, not even an argument to take out Einstein from the gravity saying because it's a force, yeah? And you're coming with other arguments. Why are you jumping? Explain to me why the fuck Einstein didn't took force out of his equation.
So look, we've got sunrise and sunsets here. As your...
Okay.
Listen to what you just got asked, Chemo.
You've got to engage.
Yeah, I've
Chemo.
just been through that. I've just told him to cite the force, otherwise there's nothing to talk about. Cite it.
Chemo, how the formula of Newton is starting?
Citation.
How the formula of Newton?
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about unless you have a citation.
You don't know what you're talking about, Chemo. This is the biggest problem.
Chemo, the same goes for you. You're saying that Einstein said it was not a force. You have to.
No, I'm saying gravity is not a force. Andrew Thomas Young.
No.
Who?
Start again.
Andrew Thomas Young.
Or is that the other one?
Identify.
No, the other one.
He's the refraction.
He's the refraction guy.
All right.
I forget his name.
Chemo.
Clearly.
It'll come to you.
But
the guy that went on Fight the Flat Earth.
Fight the Flat Earth. I know you're on about.
Yeah, he was told it's not a force.
But he said, but he also what was the next thing he said directly after saying that?
What did he say?
You can think of it as a force.
Right.
Oh, you can think of it as a force. Yeah, of course you can do. But it doesn't mean it is a force.
Well, how can you think of it as a force if it's not a force? How is that useful to do that?
Because it's not an actual force.
It's an emergent force.
It's a fictitious force. Pseudo force.
Still
Right.
works,
So
though.
it is a force then. It's just a type of force.
No. Causing no energy.
Oh,
no
you've just said a fictitious force, a pseudo force. They are
It's not real.
types of force, right?
No, it means it's not real.
Fictitious
Does it though? Is that
not
what it
real.
means? Because I don't think that is what it means.
That's what is meant by it. That you can treat it as
Is
a force.
that what, okay, so how have you established that that is what is meant by that? Because I think there's definitely contradictory evidence.
Because Brian Cox says it's not a force.
Right, but you're now saying it doesn't have any of the attributes of a force.
Right. No energy, no strength.
Right, and that's what they mean when they say that, but I don't think they do they?
Well, the definition of force is strength and energy.
But why would you think of it as a force? Why would he suggest thinking of it as a force?
Because
thinking of it as a force.
Because
if it's just not, if that's just not a thing at all,
because
as
the
you're
maths are too complicated.
But why would you work from this belief, Chemo?
I just said the maths are
Because
too
you're clearly
complicated.
this is just willful ignorance. It's just you being obtuse and deliberately misunderstanding what somebody said. It's not an argument about facts of reality. It's an argument about you misunderstanding someone's words. It's another word game.
Well, I mean, again, it's clear for me that whether something is a force or not a force, and they're very clear, the current science is very clear that gravity is not a force. Okay, it's the bending of space-time. This is your current science. They will tell you this. Your experts will tell you this. So again, I'm dealing with the highest levels of incredulity from you guys.
How you gonna bend the space-time without a force?
With a large mass. Duh.
So mass attracts mass.
No.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Kimo.
Mass, right?
I'm beginning to think Chemo might be intelligent.
If mass attracted mass, it wouldn't need to bend the space-time. That's
But
what
you
gives
think-
you
Yes,
the...
it will bend the space. If mass attract mass, it will bend the space, Kimo. Stop being stupid.
So, we understand that it's not a force, and the cause for the effect is the bending of space-time, not any inherent attractive qualities of energy.
So that effect that you call that you say is not a force, does it not attract things to the Earth?
No, nothing is attracting it. You guys really need to
Hold
look
on.
at Einstein's work here. It's like, are you guys being serious or something?
Chemo. The result of the bending of space-time is mass accelerating toward other mass. Do you agree or disagree?
No.
That's a disagree?
Yeah, so the bending of the fabric
So you can't cite Einstein because clearly you disagree with Einstein.
causes the acceleration. Well, it's not even an acceleration. It's an apparent acceleration. Because there's an apparent force. You can't have acceleration with a pseudo force.
How did you calculate it to see? Because it's an apparent acceleration or it's a real acceleration? And why did Einstein have said it's an apparent acceleration?
I didn't work it out. Einstein worked it out.
Okay, so how did you have it the conclusion? Because it's everything, it's apparent.
I didn't. Einstein did.
If it's measured at 9.8 meters per second, how is it apparent?
Because there's no actual force causing an actual acceleration.
So it's measured, but it's not actually measured. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
It's an apparent acceleration. It appears to accelerate, but there is no actual acceleration.
So if it only appears, at what point does it not actually? What's the difference between it appearing to accelerate and not actually accelerate?
So that'd be frame of reference. It's relative. So if you were from another viewpoint, you would obviously experience things falling and rising in a different perspective.
Kimo, do you have experiment that shows space bending?
No.
So why you say it's bending?
That's the current science.
What do you mean?
I mean, chemo's right here. I don't know why you're trying to argue with
Oh no, this is hilarious.
No,
Dakota's
want to
is
see
cracking me up.
experiment that shows that
You-
space
like-
is bending.
At the highest
Yeah,
order.
but the problem here is you guys are arguing on such a like dumb level that chemo's actually right here.
You see? I can't believe they don't get this.
So silly.
This is current science, guys. You just want to argue just to argue.
I don't know what's current science. Do anyone have experiment?
Current science using Einstein does not describe gravity as a force. And so chemo is right on that. You don't need to talk about a force
I
when
care
you
about
talk
your
about
opinion.
Einstein.
I want an experiment.
I just want to argue with chemo regardless of what he says.
What do you mean science? Do you have an experiment that shows the space is bending?
No.
So don't mention it.
Why?
It's not until you have experiment to show it's bending.
It's your science, dude.
It's not my science.
It is
it's
your science.
No.
Yes.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. I know you don't want it,
Tell me what
but
my
this is your
now.
science.
Thank you.
He doesn't want his own science. This is too much.
Thank you, strawmanning me, chemo.
He doesn't want his own science. No, take it away from me.
What do you mean own science? I want an experiment that shows space bending.
Right. This is hilarious. That's what we want. Welcome to the Flat Earth, Chokey.
By the way, I don't know.
No, you use it. You say it space is bending. It's gravity is not a force. When we show you experiment that shows that it is a force, but you don't have experiment that shows that space is bending, and you still claim that space is bending. Chemo.
Well, where's your Nobel Prize?
Nobel Prize?
Yeah, where's your certificate?
What? I need to show the space is not bending?
No, you said mass is attracting mass, yeah?
Yeah. Blue Marble does it every 2 days. Well, what you...
So he'll get the Nobel Prize then, yeah? So look, let's get back to this list.
No, it was done
I'm getting
before.
into Silly Town again. So, B-Ball for Life, we can scrap GPS, satellites, photography, all that nonsense.
I want 1 second, Kimbo. I want to ask that guy who have been implied because gravity is not a force to explain to me. 1 second, Kimbo.
I'm not speaking.
To explain to me how he have been got at the conclusion and what calculation did you apply to see, because it's not a force.
Okay, now here's the simplest explanation I can give you.
Yeah.
Now, what a force does is it induces an acceleration. Now, Einstein's space-time curvature gravity does not talk about a force, but inherent acceleration due to the curvature of space-time, which means you're getting acceleration without a force. However, because acceleration is the effect of a force, you can pretend for a second, or in your calculations, to say that the acceleration that is gravity is a pseudo-force. It is not actually caused by a force, but because acceleration is caused by forces, you can kind of work backwards and call that acceleration a force. That is why it is not actually a force.
Did the movement...
Welcome to Einsteinian.
1 second, Kimo. Did the movement of the object that is going through another object, you can call it, whatever you want to call it, pseudo-force, anthroforce, chemoforce, primoforce, did it's causing motion? It's causing motion.
Yeah, but the whole problem here is that
yes,
you're arguing...
this is the biggest problem.
No,
this is the biggest problem.
Is you're trying to argue with Chemo when you're not using the terms the same way he is.
No,
you're speaking on different levels of meta conversation. That's why this is so frustrating.
I am arguing with Chemo because he's implying because gravity is not a force, and
which
Newton
is true.
Is not
It is true in the aspect that Chemo is using it.
No, my friend.
He's breaking down.
Do you have motion? Did that objects that are in our experiment, let's say in space, did they gonna generate motion?
They are accelerating, yes, but that is not
so
a
they're gonna
force.
generate motion, they're gonna generate acceleration. So you can call it a force anytime you want, my friend. If you want to call it pseudo force, call it pseudo force.
Yeah,
but it's a fucking force.
The problem is he's talking about it as an inherent force or an inherent acceleration, not just anything that accelerates has a force.
Did everybody forget what I said like half an hour ago?
I wasn't here half an hour ago. What did you say?
I said mass is accelerating. It's going to exert a force when it lands on something or rests on something. That's all we need to worry about is weight is a force.
That force
There's
even causes
no
the
other
acceleration.
discussion. There's no other discussion necessary. The gravitation's definitely a thing. Weight is a force. That's all we need to talk about.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's exactly funny that flat earthers come up with all this density, buoyancy bullshit. Equilibrium, if you move it out of its equilibrium, if you move it left or right, it doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is, it always moves down.
Right, so B-ball, let's get on. Let's move on now because we're not going to be able to demonstrate GPS, satellites, all the photography from these satellites as true. So we're going to cross those off until they're presented as actual fact, not just like an anecdotal story of.
Cross those off,
I can't get a signal here, or I can get a signal there. That's just pure nonsense.
Everything's fake, chemo. That.
So let's take a look at sunrise, sunset.
Kimo, what about when it comes to
we didn't actually finish with GPS though, because we did first mention that there's a valley, right? And there you have no cell service out there. You have GPS signal. I can also bring to the table that if you go to the bottom of a parking structure, you have perfect cell signal, but no GPS signal. Why is that?
Just got to wait for the balloon to get around there. That's all. No big deal. So there's no evidence of a balloon, no evidence of a satellite, no evidence of any of this. No one can prove their claim to be true, right?
What does a GPS receiver actually get? What does it receive? What is GPS sending out? Yeah, but what is the signal? What's in that signal? Is there any sort of information in that signal?
What do you mean what information?
Well, so you receive a signal, which... Okay, so let's just say you're receiving a signal. Okay, what does that signal tell you?
What do you mean, what does it tell you?
Well, you don't just receive a signal just saying ping, signal, and then nothing.
Yeah,
it needs to be, you need to use that signal or the information
like location
contained
stuff?
within that signal to find out where you are.
Yeah, but that still doesn't prove that satellites are real. We're trying to figure out
if you maybe don't just skip to step 10 when I'm asking you about step 1.
Oh no, I'm not really interested in the workings and all that kind of stuff. I mean, again,
the workings prove that it has to be satellites, Chemo. That's what you want to avoid.
I could say the same thing for water.
No, because you haven't even tried to discuss the workings because you know it proves it's a globe.
Yeah, but it's a very poor argument because, like I say, I could just say the water needs a container, therefore ice wall, end of subject, flat Earth. That's not
you can't. Not when we're talking about step 1 of GPS.
Well, what's step 1 of water? No,
we're talking about GPS now. Just because you want to divert to another topic because you don't like that GPS proves it's a globe, and you don't have a good argument to dispose of that argument. Doesn't mean you can change
I haven't denied any of what you've said. I've said, okay, I agree. There's GPS satellite. Let's take a look to validate it. And we haven't had one.
Yeah. And I'm asking if you can agree with me on step 1 so that we can get to step 2. But you know that when we get to step 4, you're going to get fucked. That's why you want to change the topic
At the end of all these steps, will we see a satellite orbiting?
Again, you're switching the topic.
No, I'm just saying that at the end of these steps, will we get to see the goods?
Hold on, wait. You could go out and see them if you wanted to, but you don't. You don't even try.
Try what? To see a satellite?
Yes, to see a satellite.
Well, you could see the ISS.
But where are the satellites? Who's ever seen one?
Obviously, you've never even tried.
Alright, so I can't. You want me to prove your claim about satellites? So let's just scrap that one then, because I'm not going to do that. So let's have a look at your next part. You say sunrise and sunsets.
And he has successfully switched the topic.
Yep, that's what he does.
Yeah, because I'm not going to spend all day about satellites if you can't even
Yeah, you're
see
not
them.
going to spend all day about the topic that can instantly debunk you. You want to switch topic.
Are you going to
Yeah, you
provide
did switch topics when I was here talking about
what?
When I was here talking about the gas in a vacuum.
No, that was in the text. That was in the text chat. Here in the voice chat, I was looking at B-Ball for Life's list. I'll post it again for anyone can't see.
Like I get if you
I know,
guys
but
want to be
it got
arguing.
inconvenient for you, and
But
that's
this
why you
list
wanted
here-
to. And that's why you wanted to get away from it because it became inconvenient.
No, we can get to that. We can get to that after we go through this list.
You stumbled on the first one. We haven't even
But
got
the
to the second one
chemo,
yet.
GPS is part of this list, but you're trying to skip past it.
And
We
you
haven't
skipped
got
over-
any evidence for
He's
GPS
satisfied-
satellites.
skipped over satellite photography.
He's
Right.
satisfied. He's satisfied that GPS is with towers. Like we have towers that do phone stuff. It must do GPS stuff as well. He's
Simple.
satisfied with that explanation.
It's
Simple,
not a
yeah. It's just
satisfactory answer, though.
triangulation. That's all.
Keep
But
it-
it's
why
not
are they-
triangulation.
We still get
Why
the
are there
signal
not
when there's no
floating
towers around.
buoys with towers all over the fucking Atlantic Ocean and every fucking ocean? Why are there not boys out there doing that? Why are they not? Because there's fucking satellites. That's why.
All right, let Veach take over now. Then he wants to obviously get involved in the discussion.
Oh, poor chemo.
Yeah, that's
Run away.
right. You should feel that
But yeah,
way.
chemo, instead of
after,
you switching topic
I'm
every
sorry,
2
did-
seconds.
After we expose the globe live, farmers.
You wanted to
Did,
talk
did you
about
not
my
notice
list.
that I was taking the
Oh,
piss out of
it's,
you?
the globe lie has
Chemo.
been exposed.
Oh
You
no!
wanted to
been
talk
cracked.
about my
Lie.
list, but you never even got past the first one.
Oh no!
We can't
Chemo,
get
you
past the
wasted
first
it
one because
again.
no one showed any evidence of it.
Yes, we did. You ignored
Chemo,
it.
you've exposed your own retardation. That's all you've
I
done.
think he's wasted again, isn't he?
Well, I mean, what we're looking for is how GPS prove we're on a globe and where is the evidence, and all we've had is stories. How can we expect to believe in stories without any evidence?
That's all we get from you: stories and bullshit.
You believe a story, dickwad.
So,
Yeah, just ignore that point. Yeah, go on.
GPS B-ball, you can cross that off. I'm going to revise this list for you and just cross off everything that we can't demonstrate.
You lost
Just
the
cross off
war.
everything that chemo doesn't like.
Chemo, how does COVID-19 get around?
So, sunrises and
what
sunsets.
you were
Can we
saying-
tackle that one there?
COVID-19 gets around because of the what's it, the G5 or the 5 towers? Or
I
something
have
like
no
that?
idea. No
Oh
idea.
yeah, the G5.
No.
It was
Wallaby, no idea whatsoever.
Yeah, I think that's what you were talking about, right?
Yeah, I know very little. That's why I'm asking you experts. Yeah, I'm just a regular guy.
Well, I'm trying to
seeking the
remember what you were
truth,
actually talking about.
asking questions. You guys
Why
are
do
the
you ignore
wise
what all the
and
experts are
superior
saying?
ones, yes?
Emo, why do you ignore what all the experts are saying if you're trying to use them as experts?
Yeah, he's
Because we're
asking
making sure they're
questions,
not
but he ignores what they're saying.
charlatans. Okay, we have lots of con artists here. I'm sure you've seen Oliver Twist with the pickpockets, yeah? Everyone's seen that movie.
Oh,
Well, you've also,
yeah,
you've
we're
also seen
pick-
a bit of Oliver, yeah?
The truth is,
So the idea is that
pickpocket.
we've got to be very wary when... Oh, I forgot this guy. What's his name? Artful Dodger. No, is it Artful Dodger? The old man who... You've got to be very careful. Like I say, there are lots of people like that around B-Ball who try to pick the pocket, yeah? Now, you're not trying to pick... You're trying to pick the brain and take away whatever intelligence we may have left. But, yeah, so that's why
you surrendered all of your intelligence.
we hand it over to you guys just to prove to us that, you know, flat earthers are not the elite when it comes to intellect, and you guys actually are.
Does it have to be? Does it have to be an intellect?
I'm
You
sorry,
know, does
to
it
be an
have to
asshole.
be?
Yeah, you've got to be
Chemo,
intelligent to show that we're on a ball, yeah, for sure.
I'm sorry to be an
Why?
asshole, Chemo, but you don't have kids. You're too fucking stupid to even understand how they're created. So, but I
But for
respect
me,
you.
all we're looking for, B-Ball, is at your list very closely. Now, like I said, you
So,
can't
are
demonstrate...
you ready? Are you ready to go to the next thing on the list?
Fagan,
Chemo?
thank you, Tao. Fagan.
Satellite photography.
Sorry?
You
Satellite
haven't even gotten
photography.
past the first one.
Yes, because GPS cannot be verified to be factual. Just a story.
Right.
It's just a
Real
story that.
quick, Jasmine, can you not
Right,
do the whole kid thing? That just fucking irritates the shit out of me. Jasmine, please don't go to that personal deep level. Please.
I'm sorry, Stacey. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So,
Stacey,
satellite
yes.
photography.
Stacey, look, we're having a look at this list here. Have you seen it?
No, hon, I'm sorry. We're over here getting something to eat and stuff. I hadn't seen what you guys are talking about, but I just heard that in the background. It's like, oh, please don't go there.
Look at this list.
So what's going on? Okay.
This list in the chat. Now,
Okay,
this
Timo,
disturbed
satellite
me.
photography.
It disturbed me a little bit. I was like, well, hold on a second. None of this has been verified or validated in any way. So, what on earth is B-Ball on about, right? So I've come to inquire
Holy
B-Ball
shit.
about this.
Where is the list?
The horizon has not been validated or verified.
Is that in the list?
Right.
You want to go with that statement?
Who said that?
You said none of this has been verified or validated.
Well, where's the horizon?
Moon
in this?
phases have never been verified or validated.
Then where is the horizon? Tell me where it's at exactly.
Well, we can get to moon
Have you ever
phases,
been to a
but we're just
beach?
looking at the
Not
sun.
it's not a place that you can get to. You can't stand on the horizon.
Right.
Kind
Yeah,
of
can it
can. You
physically
can tell
block
somebody
things?
how to get to the horizon that you can see, so they're standing on your
Mm.
horizon.
It's a little bit like can you
Sure
get
looks
to,
like it.
Can you stand at the end of the rainbow, right?
It's not quite the same. I mean, you can
No,
stand
it's
at the
not
end
like
of where the rainbow appears for
It's
somebody else.
almost
but I guess
like
it's
they're
kind of the
both
For
same.
optical
somebody else.
phenomena.
Right. So you could stand at the horizon for somebody else.
Yep.
Yeah,
And you could
somebody else
stand
was
at someone
looking at
else's end of the rainbow. Yeah.
And
Yes,
and this
yeah.
and this is what I'm trying to say. There has to be an argument for its stupid questions like, is the horizon physical? Okay. It is and it isn't. Obviously, where the horizon is, where you're standing at, it is physical. You can go there, but when you get there, the horizon's moved.
Well, that's why you would say that the location of the horizon is physical, but not the horizon itself.
Right.
Yeah.
You're always standing on the horizon. Like everybody is standing on the horizon, pretty much.
Yeah, because the thing is, no matter, like, if you're standing somewhere, I can move to a spot where you're on my horizon.
Yes.
No matter
Yeah,
where
yeah.
you're standing, I can always do that. That's why you can talk about the location of your horizon, but you can never actually stand on the horizon, so to speak, only on
Right.
the location of the horizon.
And that is very true, but this is where these dicklogs think they have the
Oh,
power.
let's not do that. I mean, like it's a little bit. It's easy to do that sort of bullshit. Let's not throw names out there or anything like that. Like come on. Let's be let's be rational people.
Cordial? Yeah.
Okay. So you cannot stand like I can't stand on. I am standing on I'm standing on a place on the earth. For somebody else, that might be the horizon that I'm standing on. The horizon is everywhere on the globe Earth. It is literally everywhere.
Exactly. But for some reason, these people do not understand that.
I don't understand why, to be honest.
I don't either.
Because a lot of them
That's
are
why.
playing pretend.
That's why I'm here. Like that's why I'm in this room to understand why other people don't kind of get. People don't get this. Spurs doesn't get it.
The thing is, he plays games of making straw men, and the problem is there's so many people in here that are just ready to bring him hay bales.
Mm. Yes, I agree. Absolutely.
It's like I said, I might be considered an author in here, but like when you discuss with Chemo and you just let him switch from point to point to point to point, like I don't get what you're even doing then. because you're not actually arguing anything. You're not going to be able to
Well,
bring
you're
up
not
anything.
answering any questions either, right? Like Chemo's not prepared to answer any questions.
No.
When it doesn't care
So-
about the questions.
So if you do want to like ask people about that kind of stuff and why they might not believe it, Chemo is not the place to go. He's the place to go if you want to just play argument for a second.
Or bounce around on
Yeah.
ideas, some ideas.
It depends on how you argue with him. Either you let him control the conversation and you'll bounce around from idea to idea, straw man to straw man, or you confront him on the fact that he can't stay on one topic like I just did, and he won't have an answer other than keep trying to divert and hope that another glober or altered or whatever you want to call them helps him out on that, which they always seem to do, which is so annoying.
I think I don't know how to play Chemo. I think he's dumb as fuck, but intelligent in a way. Because
the thing is, he's intelligent at arguing. He is.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
he's
very clever at that.
He's actually quite likable as a person, like to talk to.
The way
He's a
you
likable
play him is you don't let him keep switching topics.
He's
Especially
likable
when
if
it-
you like
I
his
don't know how you can stop him from doing that.
Yeah,
Other
Just
than
call him
just
out
say-
every time he does.
I always call him out when he
say
does it.
like, just fuck up, just say shut up. You're on the wrong topic.
Yeah, I always call him out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And as soon as he lost with GPS, he wanted to go to the water argument about water being contained, or
I think from his previous arguments, he's satisfied that GPS works through like the telephone towers, right? Like how you get your telephone, like your mobile phone. He's satisfied that that's how it works.
Well, because
I don't
the
know
whole
how
thing
else
is,
to argue that.
yeah, the whole thing is he's good at picking out like the bigger topics and picking out like the like minutia that make him correct, and then just ignore everything else. And then people will argue, like earlier, he was having the whole argument of Einstein gravity isn't a force, which in a way he is correct. And people will still sit there and just be like, no, it's a force, it's a force, it's a force, without actually getting to why is he calling it not a force.
Well, it is a force, though.
No, we went through. If you want to go through it again, I can explain again why it's not a force
I can explain to you. I can explain to you why it is a force, though, because it depends on your paradigm. And in the Newtonian paradigm, it is a force, and that's all that's ever meant by that. We've explained it to him a zillion times, and he pretends to not understand.
Yeah. Yes.
But
this has happened. This is. I mean, I've been talking.
Yeah, but Gummy said, Veach, that he wants to explain to you why it's not a force.
Yeah,
you
but
just
I
said,
just explained to him
and
why
then
it
you
is.
just said, "Oh no, stuff that." I'm going to explain to you why it is.
Yes.
No, it is a force.
Yeah, you can all jump all over him and beat him down, but
whatever.
you see, you still don't even listen to him. You see?
An hour ago. Come on.
Guys, one at a time.
One at a time. When Gummy was like, "Let me explain to you why," you were like, "No, I'll explain to you."
Right. We adjudicated
That's
that.
not fair.
What do you mean it's not fair?
You're not understanding the duality of what the. You're not understanding.
You don't know what the argument was, Veach, and then Gummy was explaining why it's not a force.
Chemo,
and you were
why
like,
are
"I'm not
jumping in
interested."
Anyway, just let Gummy say what he's going to say.
Oh,
You're just
finally.
trying to-
Whole thing is, it all really depends on how you'll define a force.
Well,
no shit.
Sort of.
That's pretty obvious. And the thing is that if you use the kind of colloquial use of the word force, gravity or Einsteinian gravity is not a force.
That's right. If you're in
It
an
all
Einsteinian
depends on how you define
That's
it.
right. That's right.
And
Well,
I
it's not so much how you
use
define
that.
it. It's not so much how you define it. It's that he found a way to talk about motion and talk about acceleration in a way that didn't invoke the idea of a force. Whereas in a Newtonian paradigm, you are invoking the idea of a force. But in both paradigms, force equals mass times acceleration. And on some level, on some very basic definitional level, you have a mass that accelerates. Well, by definition, you can talk about that as a force. You have a force. Now,
that's exactly what.
The example I always like to give, the example I think is correct, is gravity is both a force and not a force, in the same way that you might say Robin Williams is both a comedic actor and a dramatic actor, or a not comedic actor. It just depends on what movies you're talking about. It depends on what paradigm you're in.
Okay.
Centrifugal
No,
force,
it's
the same.
Well, it's not really. It's not. The gravitation. There's a gravitational force that mass actually exerts, and we know that it does because even small masses can exert gravitational. And you can use Einsteinian's what's it, E equals mc squared to it's like fitted into like certain calculations. You could even calculate you can calculate how much gravitational force your own body exerts on the Earth.
You can never do
that's,
well, the thing is, if you want to be super like pedantic about it, or whatever the word is, your body's applying a force on like a scale or on the ground, but why is your body applying a force? Well, under Einsteinian's paradigm, it's because of this curvature of space-time, not a force.
Yes, it's because
you are still applying a force, your body is, but the reason it's applying a force is due to space-time gravity, which isn't necessarily a force.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I would absolutely agree with that.
That's where, and that's the whole problem, is that when Chemo argues about Einsteinian versus Newton,
not a force.
he goes into that very minutia of, but space-time curvature isn't a force, and that's technically correct.
That's not the problem, though, Gummy. That's not the problem at all. Because we are the ones that taught him those differentiations. We've been telling him this differentiation for a long time. We've explained the idea that it depends on the paradigm. We've explained why it is that it's both a force in some contexts and not a force in others, and what it even means to say that it is or isn't a force. All this stuff has been explained to him. It's not that he's tricking people on minutia. It's that people are just sort of fed up with them because they've already been over this 100 times.
Well, but the thing is, he'll sure, you've told him, and he'll stick to the same thing.
Yeah, but I think we've educated him on these fucking terms, by saying it over and over and over again.
The whole problem is that Chemo will sit here and argue about Einstein not being a force, and then someone will come in and just say, no, it is a force, it is a force, it is a force, when that's not actually what he's playing at. He's playing at the definitions game, at the paradigm game.
I mean, he's honestly playing at the stubborn lying game, which is what he does mostly, which is he just says things like, space isn't real. And then he'll just say whatever comes to his mind, no matter what is said to him, to continue to pursue it. If you ask him a question, he won't answer it. He'll just find a different way to say space is not real, or he'll change the subject. Mostly what he does is, in practice, a stubbornness and a refusal to actually engage in a conversation, and yet never quite look like that's what's happening.
He's very weaselly. He's a weasel.
And the problem is when
of course. Yep.
When people sit and talk to him and let him continue weaseling from topic to topic to topic, it is not interesting to listen to, because
that's exactly right.
All's happening is him bringing up straw man after straw man, and whoever's arguing with him, letting him do this. It's just.
You're 100% right, Gummy. You're 100% right. There's one thing I think you don't appreciate, which is I agree with you 100%. I think the only solution is basically people. I don't know why people like to talk to him personally, but the thing you don't appreciate is if you try to hold him to a topic, if you try to not let him squirm, well, that's equally boring, because what happens is you say you're trying to change the subject. He tries to change the subject. You say, no, stick to the topic. He tries to not stick to the topic. This continues ad infinitum without end for an hour or 2 hours or however long you have the patience. And then eventually you give up, because you are going to give up before he will, because he never gives up. And that's how it always goes. It's just as bad and just as boring to try to hold him to the topic as it is to let him flit.
He's a slippery eel.
It's not even slippery.
Of course. The whole thing, though, is that when someone's letting him play his weasel game, the only way to stop that is to play the holding him to the topic game for a little bit, like I just did, then now it clearly stopped.
Yeah, but they're both equally boring, don't you see?
Of course,
do you guys understand how equally boring is? Is you guys that sit here complain about Chemo for the last how long? How many people have for 30 minutes?
It's been about.
But you guys complain about the conversation of the topic of the
It's
Earth.
been
with
about
him, yet
8
you
minutes,
sit and
Stacey.
talk about him for 40 minutes.
Is 8 minutes too long for you, Stacey? It's been about 8 minutes.
It's not
thing
even
is, it
that.
would
Like, it's just the
seem-
fact of the irony of and how you guys speak.
Well, we're talking about the meta nature of the debate server. What is, I don't know why that's ironic.
I'm not mad. I'm just like sitting back going, this is ironic.
But how is it ironic? It makes sense that we're doing that.
It's debate flat Earth and more.
It's just the fact that you guys don't want to have the conversation because you're guys complaining about it and the same topic over and over.
We're trying to figure out how to elevate the quality.
Him for 40 minutes.
What we're trying to do is figure out how to elevate the quality of the discussion. That's a smart thing to be doing.
Well, if you don't really like the conversation with him, like you guys just said over and over, and I heard it, right? The outcome. Then why do you guys partake in it?
The problem is that Chemo is using some debate tactics to lead people around the conversation, and some people in here have no clue that that's what's happening. And then now that we're talking about it, some people might be a bit more informed on what's actually happening when Chemo's doing these weaselly, like switching topic to topic straw man that he does.
I think people know what's happening.
Yeah, I
Some
think
people
really
don't seem to.
And I think every day someone like you comes in here who knows better than everyone else and starts lecturing everyone on what they should and shouldn't be doing. But
I just think
grown
that
ups,
you're
and
naive. You're naive to think this doesn't come up all the time, and you're naive to think that if people are doing that, it's because they're not aware. Often, it's just because they can't help themselves from wanting to fight, and so they don't care.
Because
Right.
I find Flat Earth funny as fuck.
Because I'd already, my contribution to that argument was to point out to him that he was playing a word game.
Yeah.
Not about Chemo.
But everyone's got their own take on it.
But additionally, the problem is that kind of the argument where I spoke up, it wasn't really just Chemo being Chemo. It's also an argument where Globers will disagree with each other and like the whole force or not a force thing. And just because I said something about it being not a force, people in chat are writing stuff like, "Oh, Gummy's the artard who won't agree that it's a force," blah 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 blah. And it is like I don't even know.
Well, because they're criticizing, they're doing what you're doing. They're criticizing your technique, your approach to that argument. And I understand that, because I think that you should never say the words, "It's not a force," even if that's true in certain contexts, because you're just, you're feeding into this, the word game, basically.
Wouldn't that be deceptive, though?
Well, no, because the English language is nuanced. It isn't.
Yeah.
It isn't good enough to say it's not a force, because you end up with people like, for instance, Anthony Riley running around the internet who literally thinks there is no such thing as gravity because who was that guy who Chemo couldn't remember the name of? George, what was his name?
George Musa.
Musa,
Yeah,
George Musa, yeah. Because George Musa said that one sentence, that means gravity doesn't exist. And, that's why I think you have to be careful about not using those specific words, even if that is true in certain contexts.
Yeah, of course, but the problem, the problem to me, and of course people can disagree whether it's a problem or not, is when two people sit and say it's not a force, it is a force, it's not a force, it is a force. The actual conversation that would be productive, and I know you don't always want to be productive, especially with Chemo, would be what even is a force? What do you call a force? Like what is the definition of a force? Because if you're working with two different definitions of what a force is, which is what Chemo always does, he's working with a different definition that what people will want to talk about, then you're getting nowhere other than just sitting there playing word games of not using the same meaning behind words.
But Gumby, as I said before, it doesn't matter what you do. Every version that you think of, it's going to be equally getting nowhere. It's
Right.
when you're engaged in somebody who's not engaging in a fair way. It's not a fair and honest conversation. Now, it can be fun sometimes for a certain kind of laugh or certain kind of sport, but it's never going to be a fair and honest engagement. And because of that, it's never going to get anywhere.
Well, yeah, but and of course, again, people might have different opinions on this than me, but I don't find talking to Chemo and letting him just weasel around to be a fun conversation to anyone or to listen
I think
to.
a lot of people agree. But like, for example, I've done a thing where I've tried to like be as obnoxious as him as a sort of a counter, and all it really does is get two people annoying the room instead of one person. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't work.
But then, but the thing is, what you can do is just keep showing how like silly his argument is.
But that's what I'm talking about. It's the kind of thing I'm trying to describe, where you can it becomes so repetitive. And by the way, remember, because because people in here are so weird, so many different people want to argue with him about such weird things. He absolutely always can pivot away from you into a new conversation with some person who's just clamoring at the bit to say something weird. And that in that way completely, devalue anything that you have to say. You can't hold him to the fire if he starts ignoring you, starts talking to someone who's eager to talk to him. What are you going to do? The only way for you to keep the control of you're moving away from the topic is now to interrupt and interject in a valid conversation that's just started up. It just doesn't work.
Does anybody actually think Chemo is here to have a legitimate and honest conversation?
No.
Yes, I do.
No,
Yeah,
not at all.
but you're different. You're a special one, Brian.
That's logic.
But you're not here for that either, Brian. So what are you talking about? You're here, as you've told us many times.
Through all this.
As many times you've told us, you're here to tell us, to teach us, and to call us names. That's your two reasons to be here.
We've been all through this before. There is no pulling force.
I know. You're going to tell us, you're going to teach us, and then you're going to call us names. That's what you're here for.
Every force is a push, a pressure.
Yeah, except for magnetism.
How can something be an attraction?
Except for magnetism. You never do have an answer for that, do you?
No, I do. That's attraction.
Yes. So what's the point?
It's not a pulling
Attraction
force.
is not a force.
When an apple falls from a
What is attraction if not a pulling force?
What's the difference between pull and attraction?
No, it's impossible to have a force that pulls.
But you can have attraction.
It's not pulling, is it?
Oh,
it's just
okay. That's fine. That's fine. So
to only be attracted to certain items, certain metal.
Or if it might be attracted to all items. Just depends. But call it attraction if you want.
Brian, if I fall out of a tree, is that a pushing force or is that a pulling force?
If you fall out of it, what the fuck are you doing up a tree to start with?
No, it's a really fair response.
You have to be a little bit more charitable with the hypothetical, Brian. I think we've all climbed a tree, right?
He's saving the neighbor's cat.
However,
come on, dude.
You do have an experience of climbing a tree, don't you?
I'm going up there to get that helium balloon that got stuck.
What about it? What about climbing a tree?
Why
are we climbing trees all of a sudden?
To grab a helium balloon and I fall out of the tree. Is that a pushing force?
How about the one that's in the chat right now?
Right.
But we had this conversation a few months ago where this thing right here that's in the...
And I can't understand why you're still going fucking on about it.
It's got to be pulling. That's the only thing it can be doing is pulling it out of the jar.
There isn't a pull. It's a push.
No, that's a pulling force.
Why do
you
say
that? Pulling it out of the jar. Gravity is pulling it out.
Are you just making that up?
It's push.
Are you just making that up, or do you actually have a source or some sort of reference that demonstrates or says that?
We've been through all this shit. We should have put this to bed now.
Look, Mavic,
pushing it out of the glass.
If you're happy to call it an attraction force, then just call it all an attraction force. Fine.
Oh, well, yeah.
I don't really see the difference between attraction
and I'm pretty sure it's the same force, right? Are we talking about the same
it's not a thing. It's not a thing, Wallaby, obviously.
All right. If that's silica gel, whatever the fuck it is, that's coming out of that jar, could you describe the push a little bit to me? Because I don't see how that could be a push.
The air, maybe.
No, I'm driving, so I can't see it.
Oh, so you're talking about something you don't even know what's being said. Okay.
No, well, like if I was going to say it was going to be a pushing force, it would have to be the air pushing it out of it, but it's not, right? It's being dragged out. It's being dragged out of the glass with the swish of the swizzle.
Look, the cleanest example is magnetism, right? There's clearly an attraction force happening there. That's clearly a pull by any reasonable definition of the word pull. Or if you don't want to say pull for some reason, just call it attraction and be done with it.
So the attraction force of gravity? No, I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
It's not a force, that's it. There's no force involved.
Well, it's an attraction force.
Just an attraction.
Okay,
only certain metal.
Oh, do we have to call it a different name?
Gravity, it's everything.
Gravity. We have to call gravity a different name now.
Just while we hold on.
Brian's trolling. He's
not. He's
just call it matter instead. They are.
So gravity.
So
gravity is an attraction force between all things, Mabbit. Magnetism, yes, it only attracts between certain things, but gravity is like magnetism, but applies to everything.
Hold on a minute. Hold on. I bought on Jet 1020.
Waiting for the helium balloon example.
Yeah, where it's like an example back in the past when Jedi and myself asked a long time ago, where it's a proof of gas attracting gas, and if you're going to say stuff like that.
All things have mass.
Gases do attract each other. Gases will attract each other. Yes.
Yeah. So show me gas attracting gas.
What do you mean show you?
Hold on. You said all things. So gas is like.
Gases have a gravitational force.
One argument do you run around just using the same argument?
Very clearly.
But what do you want to see exactly? You need to be clear about what you're asking to see.
Yeah, I'll tell you again for the third time. Gas attracting gas.
Yeah, but what does that mean to you? What does that mean to you exactly?
What does that mean to you?
Hold on, guys, one at a time, let me say something. Guys, one at a time, let me say something. Guys, anytime you see gas, you're going to see gas attracted to gas. Now, there's going to be other forces acting on it. There's going to be a lot of forces, and if you want to know where a gas molecule is going to go, you got to look at all the forces acting on it. When you say, show me gas attracting gas, well, anytime you see gas, you're going to see attraction between it.
You can't show it.
I just told you how to see it.
How do I see it then, again? Show me. How do I see it right now? A gas attracting a gas.
Every time you look at anything like gas, you're going to see attraction between the molecules, but you're also going to see other forces like kinetic forces where they bounce off each other.
I just want to see a gas attracting a gas.
Anytime
you're entitled to. You're entitled to, Stacey, as well.
Oh my god! How can you show a gas attracting a gas? I'm not really
I'll tell you
sure.
what. I'll make it easier for you. Let's have mass attracting.
I know.
You can
really,
see it
really
anytime you look
does
at gas.
happen.
Anytime you look at gas, you can see it. Okay, the molecules in that gas are going to strike each other, right? If they're going to strike each other, that means they were headed towards each other, right?
Sure.
So isn't that
I'm not
what you want to see?
I think they are.
Wallaby, hold on.
They were attracted to each other. You guys.
Does that not meet the criteria of what you're asking for?
No, it does
Why
not
not?
show me attraction. Are you
Well, then
kidding
what is
me?
it? Then that's why I said, what is exactly that you want to see?
Yeah, exactly.
Just to be really clear.
Here's
the
mass
plane.
attracting.
Okay, not to be really
Here's
clear
mass
then.
attracting gas.
No problem.
See how the gas is falling out of the cup?
Yeah, that's gravitational force.
No, it's just that gas is heavier than the medium it's in, so it goes down.
It's being
heavier implies
by
force,
Earth.
dude.
Put it underwater, and guess what? It'll go up.
Yeah, that's a buoyancy force.
Exactly.
No,
Okay,
so,
by the way, buoyancy can't exist. Buoyancy can't exist without a gravity force.
Yes, it can.
No, it can't. Go look up the definition.
No, it can't.
Can I say something real quick? Wait, say something real quick.
We've been through all that, fucker.
I don't know if you have or haven't. But buoyancy requires gravity to exist.
Yes.
No, it don't.
Yes, it does, dude.
Why doesn't it? I don't understand how it can't. And explain to me, please.
Just look at the formula, Rabbit.
Explain to me how a gas cannot like do what it does without gravity?
Well, you release gas underwater and it will go up.
That's buoyancy, Brian.
Irregardless to your
it's
fucking
more
ludicrous
buoyant-
assumption
It's
that it's
more
being
buoyant
pulled
than
down by
water.
gravity,
Yes.
it goes up. Now, if you
What does it do
release
in-
a
but what
lighter
does-
gas in a heavier gas,
Oh my
that
god, you don't have
gas
to yell.
will go up.
Hey, bro,
However,
you don't have to yell.
if you
don't have to
release
shout.
a heavier gas in
You know,
lighter
you don't have
gas,
to shout.
it
Come
will
on,
go
man.
down.
Brian, real quick. So
Well,
just to be clear,
just get it in your head. It's not hard, for fuck's sake.
so super clear, right? So where the gas is produced in the mass of the Earth, the gas then goes away from the mass of the Earth, which is said to be attracting it to it.
Makes no sense.
Gotcha.
Well, listen, there are a lot of forces that act on everything, right? You have to add up all the forces to figure out where something's going to move. Because motion, where it actually goes, is an amalgamation of all the forces acting on it.
Can you show us where the gas are created?
We need earlier.
I can show
This
you
is
where
not
the gas,
about
where the
people.
gas has
Yeah.
come out.
I want to see it. Coming out of the Earth, gases.
Yeah, there's gases coming out of the Earth, and
Yeah, I want
they
to
go.
see
They
it. You
travel
know,
up.
so show me how you inflate a balloon with the gas coming out of the Earth. Like it has to be a lot of gas, right?
Well, it can be like gases at underneath the ocean can be like fairly compact. Like they're like as they go up, they get like less and less pressure. Like they're not in pressure, right? Less
Sure.
pressurized.
So you expect
Right.
to see bubbles up in the ocean, right? Bubbles
Yeah.
coming up.
They get bigger as they go up.
Let's see where are the bubbles coming out of the ocean.
You
Well,
must have
there's
seen
some.
bubbles coming out of a lake, surely to fuck.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
That is not fish that fart.
No.
No,
Well,
that's
what
gas.
is it then? What is it
Gas
then?
it's said to be attracted to. Like, there's the gas in the mass, and oh dear, the gas is going away from the mass. Let's look at the bubble going up through the ocean, surrounded by all that mass of water, but going up, away from that mass. Most definitely not attracted by it, right? Yeah. Great
Oh,
story.
right. Okay.
Again, you gotta look at all the forces involved. Traction's just one of them.
So the
That's
gases
not
get
rocket science. This is really
So
straightforward.
there's obvious. Well, hold on. There's obviously a different thing happening there, right? So it's not gravity. That there is gravity working on the gas, but there's also a thing called buoyancy, where things heavier than the surrounding things will go lower. It happens in our atmosphere as well. Like things, gases that are heavier in our atmosphere will go to lower areas.
Really?
Okay, let's do a thought experiment then. Let's take away the gravitational force, and would it still happen?
No. What's
It
left?
wouldn't
Then
work in the
take away
same
the
way.
buoyancy force and see if it will still happen. as we see
Buoyancy
it.
is not a force.
Wallaby. So if you take away gravity, you're not gonna have buoyancy. You need
Yeah.
gravity for buoyancy.
Yes.
This is tested and verified.
It's part of the equation. It's how it's
if
defined.
you
The word
if you
is-
go in a
gravity. Let's
if you
talk
go
about
in
that.
a 0G plane with a gravity column, or no, a density column, and during the 0G part, that density column won't be sorting itself out. Can you explain why?
No, it will be sorting itself out.
Nope.
Everything is falling at the same rate.
No.
Now the heavier things will fall faster than the lighter things.
What makes something
You just
heavy?
contradicted yourself in one sentence.
What gives
do,
something
when they go in
weight
these
or
planes,
heaviness?
you assume that the fucking thing loses all it. No, everything is falling at the same speed.
Can you
It's just that
explain
the
to
plane
me? Hold
is
on.
falling.
Wait.
You're inside.
Wait.
Hold on, let me finish my rant.
Okay, sure.
Everything's falling. It's not in free fall. It's not in like space. Everything is still falling. It just gives you the appearance that it's floating. It's not. It's that the plane is falling slightly faster than you. That's all it is.
Yes, we know.
Everything is still falling.
Yeah, but when you're in free fall, Nabbit, it's the equivalent of not being under a gravity influence. It's the equivalence principle. It's something
The question is, when it's falling, why aren't the densities seeking equilibrium?
They are if you leave them long enough.
No.
If you left
Not
them for
during
a
the
couple of minutes.
falling.
Well, why did they leave equilibrium?
Well, they wouldn't if they were in free fall.
Yes, they would.
Shake the fucking thing up if you want to.
Well, the density would go from the middle to the outwards areas.
I mean, if you've ever seen people do this experiment on, like, say, a parabolic flight, it's instant, man. That density column
I posted a video where someone does it.
Yeah, there's the video. It's instant, man.
It explodes.
Yeah, what does density do? What does a density tower do in 0G? I love
everything
this.
you need to know about this is in there, Mabbit.
The whole question is why doesn't density seek equilibrium when it's in free fall?
Yeah.
We used to do it
another
like
overarching force.
I remember in physics, it was like a little fish. They had like a little fish inside, which they'd squeeze the bottle and make it go down, and then release the bottle and make it go up.
Oh, some sort of diver thing it was called, wasn't it?
No, watch. As soon as they hit free fall.
Well, are you prepared to watch the video or not?
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
I'm fucking driving.
Oh,
And what's
I'm sorry.
funny about that density tower is if you go faster,
No,
than
when you're
you
not
accelerate
driving,
at negative G's, it will
It'll
organize in reverse.
Yep.
I've got about another hour and 20 minutes to go yet. No, it's all good. Things are good, but it's not about chemo.
So why do density towers go in reverse when they're negative G's?
You know, maybe you can tell us why.
Because there's an overarching force that controls density and buoyancy.
We've just decided gravity isn't a force.
yes. Well, I'm glad that you're on board.
You can't have a pulling force.
Call an
It's
attraction
not
force.
I don't think gravity is a pulling force.
It's an attracting force. Whoa.
That guy that come in here who was a metallurgist or something, he says, I know, I definitely stretch metals apart. I said, no, you don't. What mechanism pushes them jaws apart? Well, it's hydraulics. Ta-da! It's a pressure.
What are you talking
you
about,
fucking idiot.
Brian? What are you talking about? No one has any idea who that guy is. We're not talking about him.
No. I'm just saying.
If there are no such thing as pulling forces, then how did I pull my hamstrings?
Oh, yeah.
You shouldn't run so fast.
Brian, you've already admitted that you'll call it an attraction force. If you call it an attraction force, then what more is there to say? Call it an attraction force.
Not a force. It's just an attraction. There's no force.
If mass is accelerating in a direction, it's a force. Stop it.
God, like fucking, how hard is it to fucking recognize that there's a force happening?
It's very hard.
Does it make an acceleration? Does it make two objects accelerate?
Yes, there's an acceleration. Yes.
What does? Magnetism.
Gravity. Gravity has an acceleration.
Magnetism has an acceleration.
Next to a cabbage, it's going to make the cabbage accelerate, is it?
Yeah, if it's strong enough, it'll repel it.
You think so?
9.8 meters per second per second.
Oh, fuck the 9.8 meters per square. That's a load of bollocks.
Well, no, you go down at 9.8 meters per second, your tower disorganizes.
No, you
go at
don't.
18 meters. You go at 18 meters per second squared downwards, and it'll organize upside down.
Crock of shit.
So it's not 9.8 meters per second per second?
Well, it depends what shape the object is, don't it? If you had an 8x4 sheet and laid it flat and tried dropping it, it wouldn't drop at 9.8 meters per second. Stand it on its edge, and it might drop at twice that speed.
Well, that's how we gonna. Hold on, that's how we gonna weight. That's how I weigh myself. You know, I'm a pretty heavy guy.
Wait, Brian, did you just say if you turn it on its side, it's gonna accelerate twice as fast?
There's less resistance of air, isn't there?
Hey, you take all the air out, and it'll fall at 9.8 meters per second squared. There you go, buddy.
We don't live in that, though, do we?
It doesn't matter. We can test it even if we don't live in it.
Why have you got a standard that we do not ever work in?
I see it. I can test it. Therefore, it exists. Therefore, I can test it. Shut up.
What's the use of applying that calculation when it doesn't comply with what we live in? We know our atmosphere causes resistance.
Yes. Why don't we eliminate that resistance so we can find out what's left?
But how can you apply 9.8 meters per second if it only equates to a vacuumous state?
Well, with your paper on its edge, you get close to 9.8 meters per second. I'm not quite there to still have resistance, but it gets closer to it. It doesn't exceed it ever.
I find it ludicrous to have 9.8 meters per second, which has only been calculated in a vacuum, and nothing we do, nothing we build, ever goes near a fucking vacuum.
The more aerodynamic you make something, the closer you get to 9.8 meters per second. Eliminate the air, you get right to it. You're just finding the exact number that it works at.
Do you know what it all is? Fucking ludicrous.
Ludicrous. Go to the top of Mount Everest. We can go there. That's where we live. Well, kind of poorly, but you know, you can drop something there. You'll see it gets closer to 9.8 meters per second.
And I agree with you. If we all fucking lived at 29,000 feet.
So what do we have to do? Take the average height? So what would we
live down here where the air is.
Yeah, Mabbit.
Shut up, for fuck's sake. It's not about chemo.
For fuck's sake.
We all live down here relatively close.
Okay, so Mabbit, should we go to, just to do all our measurements, should we take an average of the height of a human on Earth? We'll just calculate everybody's altitude where they live, and we'll just pick a number that's the midpoint between all of those humans, and that's where we'll drop things.
Why not have a sliding scale?
We do. Gravity it manifests itself completely in zero atmosphere. And
You're saying the G word again. We've deleted the G word.
Oh, I'm sorry. 9.8 meters per second is evident in zero air. And the denser the air you make it, the slower it falls. So we could even go up to like the bottom of a cave and get up to 15, 16 psi.
And the good thing of that is that when you have that number of how much it will travel in no air, you can then figure out how much it will travel in air, you can find out how much drag it has, and then you can just use those two numbers to know how it will travel in air, because you know the drag and you know how much it will travel in no air.
It's ludicrous.
Yeah, it's ludicrous. Ludicrous to use information to actually learn and use in science. It's ludicrous.
We don't live in water, so we shouldn't test submarines.
Fuck off. We travel in water, so yes, we should test.
Yeah, but water normally isn't underwater, air in a bubble usually isn't in such a huge quantity underwater. So when we bring a submarine underneath, we're bringing a bunch of air down. We shouldn't be doing that, because that's not how it is normally. That's ludicrous.
It is ludicrous. I agree with you. I've had my coffee now.
Yeah, we can only test things that we actually live in. So we can't test fire because we don't live in fire.
We don't live in a fucking vacuum.
We don't live in a fire.
Good. We don't fucking test things.
We don't test things in fire. Wow, that's really cool.
So why do we test things and get a standard from an area that we'd never ever fucking go to?
Yeah, don't test fire. We can't test anything in fire because we don't live in fire.
That's ludicrous.
Why is 0 degrees ice? We don't live in ice. We live in air.
You're changing the subject.
But we live in air. Why don't we have 0 degrees being air, not ice?
You're doing a chemo now.
Am I?
Changing the subject.
Well, the subject is actually ludicrous because you're saying because we don't live somewhere, we can't test it. Therefore, just about everywhere we don't live, we can't test. We can't test deserts because we don't live in deserts. What are you talking about? It makes absolutely no sense. We test things in the conditions they are or are available.
And it's very useful to talk about stuff with its maximum efficiency. Like you can talk about an engine, how much it would have at maximum efficiency. We can't ever reach it, but it can be very good as a measuring tool. That same way we can talk about stuff in absolute vacuum. We might not be able to reach absolute vacuum, but it's still a good use for measuring stuff. That's why having scales is a good thing. You can talk about the 0 or the maximum of things. It's very useful.
It's like the curve. It's the curve, right? Like you get to the edge of the curve.
Yeah. So we can talk about the maximum efficiency of an engine. We can talk about the maximum rate of falling or acceleration. And sure, we might not ever reach those, but they're very, very, very useful in science and technology. They're things that you utilize every day.
Why wouldn't you do that? Like I can't imagine a part of science what you wouldn't use that.
The one where you can't use where you can't really talk accurately about anything because you're not allowed to use numbers that are absolute or objective or maximum or whatever. You have to use whatever is actually somewhere.
Yeah, that sounds pretty shitty to me. That's a pretty shitty kind of science.
It's like, what's the acceleration? Oh well, in New York at 580 altitude, we have 9%. That's not what we care about.
We care about maximum. Like, what can you do in a perfect kind of scenario?
How much thrust will I need to keep my airplane moving at X speed at 50,000 feet?
Well, look, we haven't tested it in the desert. Just saying. All right, so we don't know.